Namaskar, a warm welcome to World News, an Indian perspective on All India Radio. This is Aditi Lumba, and with me is R.S. Raghu, bringing glimpses of major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring for you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. In this edition, we have an exclusive interview with Nadia Rashid, Deputy Resident Representative of the Undp India. As the world fights the COVID-19 pandemic, we begin with the program with a message of precaution to stay safe and protected by following these three simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain social distancing, focus on hand and face hygiene. First, the headlines. India gearing up to roll out nationwide COVID-19 vaccination next week. WHO expresses disappointment over China delaying the visit of expert panel to probe the origin of coronavirus in Wuhan. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds talks with German Chancellor Angela Merkel through video conferencing. India-France strategic dialogue to be held tomorrow. Democrat Rafael Varnok wins runoff elections in Georgia. Control of US Senate hangs in balance. And in sports, Rohit Sharma, Navdeep Saini and Shubham Gill join the Indian squad for Sydney cricket test against Australia beginning tomorrow. India is gearing up to roll out its nationwide COVID-19 vaccination program by next week. The move comes close on the heels of approval of two made-in-India vaccines by the country's drug regulator, the Drugs Controller General of India. Health Secretary Rajesh Bhushan told the arrangements are in place to introduce COVID-19 vaccine within 10 days from date of emergency use authorization. He outlined the systems and logistics to ensure the smooth rollout of the vaccination program. These include real-time tracking of vaccine inventory, its temperature and other critical parameters.
There are temperature trackers established in each GMSD, each state vaccine store, each district vaccine store, and these temperature trackers on a real-time basis upload information about the temperature inside the facility onto a central server. So sitting in Delhi or sitting in Lucknow or sitting in Trivandrum, the program manager can know which center has seen a sudden dip in temperature or a sudden hike in temperature, so that corrective steps can be taken.
A priority group of 300 million people, including frontline health workers, persons over 50 years, persons with comorbid conditions, have been identified for vaccination. The data has been pre-populated into CoWIN digital platform. Real-time monitoring of any adverse event following immunization, AEFI, is also in place. Meanwhile, Indian government has launched Indian SARS-CoV-2 Genomics Consortium, INSACOG, within the country about a new strain of virus. Secretary Biotechnology Renu Swarup said 10 laboratories have been identified where genome sequencing work is being done. She said there is no scientific data to support the higher infectivity of UK SARS-CoV-2. Member Health and Niti Aayog Dr. V.K. Paul said an optimistic scenario is emerging with the pandemic situation consistently improving in the country in terms of active cases and new deaths declining.
India has started direct flight services to the United Kingdom. Flights were stopped between the two nations in the last week of December amid concerns over the highly infectious new COVID-19 strain. Civil Aviation Minister Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri said that while flights from the UK will be able to enter India from January 8th, flights from India will start from today. Two Air India flights, one from Delhi and one from Mumbai to London, are scheduled for today. The new strain was first detected in the United Kingdom and prompted British Prime Minister Boris Johnson to announce a nationwide lockdown on Tuesday. The World Health Organization WHO said that China has denied entry to the international experts team due to arrive in Wuhan to investigate the origins of COVID-19. China cited lack of necessary clearances and had denied the two experts entry into the country. However, China today said that details of the visit, including dates, were still being finalized and the issue is not only limited to visa clearances. The long-awaited probe by a 10-member expert team was agreed upon by Beijing after many months of negotiations with the WHO, which was expected to begin investigations in January 2021. More from our Beijing correspondent.
World Health Organization Chief Dr. Tedros has expressed disappointment over China not yet granting permission to international experts to enter the country to probe the origins of COVID-19. Dr. Tedros said the members of international scientific team on COVID-19 had already begun their journey, but Chinese officials have not yet given the necessary permissions.
We learned that Chinese officials have not yet finalized the necessary permissions for the team's arrival in China. I'm very disappointed with this news, given that two members had already begun their journeys and others were not able to travel at the last minute. But I have been in contact with senior Chinese officials, and I have once again made it clear that the mission is a priority for WHO and the international team. I have been assured that China is speeding up the internal procedure for the earliest possible deployment. We're eager to get the mission underway as soon as possible.
Beijing had previously said it would give the WHO's team full access to investigate the origins of the coronavirus. However, Chinese Foreign Ministry said authorities and experts are still working to contain recent outbreaks in China and to advance the internal preparations for experts to come to China. It remains to be seen when the visit of independent panel of experts to Wuhan will be through. Anshuman Mishra, All India Radio, Beijing.
The virus was first detected in Wuhan in late 2019. With the initial outbreak linked to a market, while China has dismissed criticism of its handling of early cases that emerged in late 2019, some leaders, including US President Donald Trump, have questioned Beijing's actions during the outbreak. Trump has often called it the China virus and has repeatedly called for the Chinese government to be held accountable for this plague. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has also slammed the Chinese Communist Party for continuing to spread disinformation regarding COVID-19 and obstructing the WHO investigation.
EU drug regulator European Medicines Agency EMA has authorized the use of Moderna COVID-19 vaccine. In a statement, the EMA said EMA's Human Medicines Committee has thoroughly assessed the data on the quality, safety and efficacy of the vaccine. It said that they have granted formal conditional marketing authorization. The EMA says trials demonstrated a 94.1% efficacy rate. The statement added that the vaccine provides another tool to overcome the current emergency. The EU began vaccinations on 27 December. The Netherlands started its inoculation program today. Germany has extended the lockdown in the country. State and federal governments agreed on Tuesday to prolong the lockdown and introduce new restrictions. German Chancellor Angela Merkel said that they must be especially careful now in light of the new, more virulent strain of the coronavirus. According to the new rules, people arriving in Germany from high-risk areas will be required to submit 2 negative test results. A minimum 5-day quarantine period will be mandated even if the first test is negative.
Three steps to stay protected and stay safe from COVID-19. Wear face mask, 2 gaz ki duri to maintain social distancing, maintain hand and face hygiene.
India's Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying said that confirmed cases of avian influenza, that is bird flu, has been reported till now from Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Himachal Pradesh and Kerala. The flu has been detected among crows in Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan and among migratory birds in Himachal Pradesh and among ducks in Kerala. No case has been detected in chickens. Department of Animal Husbandry has issued detailed advisory to states to further intensify surveillance to detect any case in poultry birds. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has underlined the need to strengthen post-COVID cooperation with Sri Lanka. At a joint press conference in Colombo, he described Sri Lanka as India's closest maritime neighbor and partner.
As maritime countries in the Indian Ocean, India and Sri Lanka have a shared interest in ensuring maritime security and safety. We have a long history of cooperation in this regard. India, as many of you know, has been a first responder in some emergency situations. I'm confident that this domain of cooperation will continue to expand in the days ahead. We stand ready to enhance Sri Lanka's capabilities to meet growing maritime and security challenges.
Speaking on the ongoing reconciliation process with the Tamil population in Sri Lanka, Dr. Jaishankar said that its completion is in Sri Lanka's own interest to fulfill their expectations.
Our support for the reconciliation process in Sri Lanka is long-standing, as indeed for an inclusive political outlook that encourages ethnic harmony. It is in Sri Lanka's own interest that the expectations of the Tamil people for equality, justice, peace and dignity within a united Sri Lanka are fulfilled. That applies equally to the commitments made by the Sri Lankan government on meaningful devolution, including the 13th Amendment of the Constitution. The progress and prosperity of Sri Lanka will surely be advanced as a consequence.
Foreign Minister of Sri Lanka hailed the civilizational ties between the two countries. He expressed gratitude towards the support extended by India during the past several months of the COVID pandemic.
The Indian government's neighbourhood first policy made a very positive impact on our health sector and the economy during the critical period, unprecedented crisis, and also extended assistance to repatriate Sri Lankans, pilgrims, students, and medically concerned. My delegation sought India's partnership for our economic revival, stability through enhanced investment in different sectors of the economy. Of course, as close neighbors and being the littoral states of the Indian Ocean, we discussed defense and security related matters as well as the issues related to maritime and fisheries sectors.
In Georgia, Democrat Rafael Varnok has repeated Republican Kelly Loeffler in one of the two Georgia Senate runoffs. Mr. Varnok, senior pastor at the Benzer Baptist Church in Atlanta, will be Georgia's first black senator. If the Democrats win both runoffs, the Senate will be divided evenly between 50 Democrats and 50 Republicans. In such a situation, Vice President Kamala Harris has the casting vote, giving Democrats the majority. If Perdue wins re-election in the other Georgia runoff, the Senate will remain in Republican hands. Global stock today traded mixed as investors awaited for the U.S. Senate runoff election results in Georgia. China's Shanghai Composite Index climbed 0.6, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng and Singapore's Straits Times both added up to 0.2%. On the other side, South Korea's Kospi declined 0.8% and Japan's Nikkei 225 fell 0.4%. European stocks were up in intra-trade. Germany's DAX and France's CAC both rose 0.8% and London's FTSE 100 was trading 1.7% up.
India's Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi interacted virtually with his German counterpart, Chancellor Dr. Angela Merkel, on Wednesday. The Prime Minister appreciated Chancellor Merkel's leadership role in Europe and the world and thanked her for the India-Germany strategic partnership. The two leaders discussed key issues of mutual importance, including the response to the COVID-19 pandemic, bilateral ties, regional and global issues, particularly India-EU relations. Mr. Modi welcomed Germany's decision to join the International Solar Alliance ISA and expressed his desire to further strengthen cooperation under the platform of Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure CDRI. The two leaders agreed to hold the 6th Intergovernmental Consultations IGC at an early date in 2021 and to set an ambitious agenda for the same. India and France will hold their annual strategic dialogue in New Delhi tomorrow. National Security Advisor Ajit Doval will lead the Indian delegation, while the French delegation will be led by Emmanuel Bon, diplomatic advisor to the French president. In a statement, External Affairs Ministry said the two sides will hold discussions on wide-ranging bilateral and global issues.
WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange was denied bail by a British court on Wednesday. District Judge Vanessa Bretzer issued the order while the courts considered an appeal by U.S. authorities against an earlier decision by the judge denying his extradition request by the U.S. On Monday, the judge had denied an American request to send Mr. Assange to U.S. over espionage charges. Elsewhere, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison is reported to have said Mr. Assange is free to return home to Australia once legal challenges against him are dealt with.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has said that fragility and conflict are among the greatest obstacle to the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. He was addressing the Security Council in New York on challenges of maintaining peace and security in fragile contexts. Mr. Guterres stated that COVID-19 pandemic has further exacerbated these trends and the linkages between conflict and fragility have been particularly visible in the African continent.
The climate emergency is a further driver of insecurity. It is no coincidence that of the 15 countries more susceptible to climate risk, 8 host a United Nations peacekeeping operation or special political mission. From the Sahel and Central Africa to the Horn of Africa, variability in rainfall patterns is disrupting long-existing patterns of transhumance, resulting in tensions and recurring clashes between communities, including across national borders.
Poverty alleviation has been one of the biggest challenges. The specter of conflicts, hunger and deprivation has added to the woes of the people, especially in Africa. Add to it the effects of climate change and COVID-19, it has been a daunting task. Global institutions are ramping up their efforts to ensure a coordinated and cohesive response to address these issues. The UN Secretary General on Wednesday warned the world about the vicious cycle of climate emergency and poverty in the world in general, and Africa in particular. In today's hotspot, we are in conversation with Mr. Nadia Rashid. Nadia Rashid, Deputy Resident Representative of the Undp, India. Ms. Rashid shares her views on the Sustainable Development Goals, multidimensional poverty and the Indian and global efforts to address it.
Namaskar, we have with us Nadia Rashid, Deputy Resident Representative, UNDP, India. Welcome to the show, Ms. Nadia Rashid.
Thank you so much, and it's a real pleasure to be able to join you today.
For the benefit of our listeners, it will be great if you can share some insights about your work.
So I'm very fortunate to have worked with UNDP for over 15 years now, and as you mentioned, I've really worked with UNDP on a range of issues with a particular focus on health issues and gender issues. And for UNDP, as the UN Development Program, our focus is really on being able to interconnect critical development challenges, especially when it comes to addressing issues relating to poverty in terms of promoting governance and at the same time addressing sustainability and ensuring that we are protecting our environment.
All of us are seeing how the COVID-19 pandemic has cast its shadows on the growth and development. We see it as a challenge, and how the international agencies are working towards addressing the concerns of people in this direction.
The international agencies, of course, have really prioritized the response to COVID, not just the UN, but international partners around the world, and of course, governments around the world. This has been truly an unprecedented crisis when we look at the scale of the crisis. It's firstly, of course, a health crisis, but it's also a health crisis that has unleashed a huge development crisis in the sense that the impact of COVID has really disrupted social and economic life around the world. So for the UN very quickly established a framework to respond to the social and economic impacts of COVID. And this is a global framework that's being applied around the world. So UN country teams around the world are working with governments to help them in looking at how to mitigate the social and economic fallout of COVID, in addition to supporting the health system response, which is, of course, absolutely essential because we need to stem the spread of the virus to be able to also contain the economic and social fallout, the large-scale economic disruption that we're seeing around the world due to the virus.
Another major issue which has gained currency over the years has been that of climate change. The climate change and poverty have been interrelated in more than one way. How are we going to address the twin challenges?
Climate change is endangering lives and livelihoods through, for example, food and water scarcity, through extreme weather events, and through displacement of communities. And India is particularly vulnerable to the effects of climate change, along with other countries in South Asia and in other parts of the world. So if I can give you some estimates, we actually estimate that by 2030, more than 100 million people could fall into extreme poverty due to climate change, and another 200 million could be displaced from their homes as a result of climatic disasters. So this is really an emergency. Unless urgent action is taken, we know that climate change will affect gains in reducing poverty and will slow down progress towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And why is this so important? I mean, we also know that the poorest communities who've really done the least in terms of contributing to climate change are the ones who are facing the brunt of the impact. And this is because for the poorest communities, their livelihoods are often very dependent on our natural environment and on our natural resources, including climate-sensitive sectors like water and like forests. So the effects of climate change in contributing to erratic rainfall, drought, rising temperatures, thinning forests, and so forth are impacting the poor the most in a way where they lose their incomes. If there is climate-related event, they face compromised access to food and nutrition, sometimes loss of housing or damage to housing, and then also loss of access to essential services like health and education services. So it's extremely important for us to really prioritize action to address climate change, and particularly focusing in on its impacts on the poorest community.
Yeah, you rightly pointed out, when we talk about the poverty eradication or say poverty alleviation to say so, many indices have come out. One of them is the multidimensional poverty index by UNDP. It measures the complexities of people's lives individually as well as collectively every year. How do you view this vis-a-vis the SDGs?
As you've mentioned, the Multidimensional Poverty Index, or if you don't mind, I'll use the acronym MPI, is really a continuation of what we've been discussing, the importance of recognizing that poverty is multidimensional in nature. So the MPI recognizes that poverty is complex and it's multifaceted. So it looked beyond income to understand how do people experience poverty, and it identifies how people are being left behind using three key dimensions. So firstly, it looks at health, secondly, it looks at education, and thirdly, it looks at standard of living. And across those three dimensions, it identifies 10 indicators to measure. And so coming to your question on the links with the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs, the MPI as an index is really a very important tool to advance the SDGs, because it allows countries to measure progress across multiple SDG dimensions. So for example, it also helps in health policymakers to focus on how to ensure that we are meeting the commitment of leaving no one behind by analyzing poverty levels for different population subgroups, for example, or in different regions, or across rural and urban areas. And it also allows policymakers to be able to focus in on priority groups, for example, women and children, to understand what kinds of deprivation are being faced. It allows for tracking across time. It also allows us to promote more integrated policy solutions by identifying interlinkages across sectors. So the MPI is really a very important tool for measuring multidimensional poverty, but also for advancing the SDGs, being able to monitor progress towards the SDGs, and also importantly progress on who is being left behind and why, and helping to point to policy solutions to address that.
UNDP has been working in collaboration and partnerships in various projects in India. How does this association help out not only India but also the countries in the region?
Now, in a time where it really has been unprecedented, the scale of the crisis that we're seeing, as I mentioned earlier. And I think that scale also points to why it is absolutely critical to promote collaboration to address common challenges, whether these are common challenges that countries face at national level or subnational level, or whether these are common challenges of regional nature or of a global nature. It's extremely important in a world where we are so interconnected to learn from each other, to be able to share experiences, and this is where the UN can play an important role. So for an organization like UNDP, we have offices all around the world, and for us it's extremely critical that the experiences that come from countries around the world are shared so that key stakeholders are able to share knowledge, information, best practices to support each other. We are doing that is working with Niti Aayog, and Niti Aayog has taken on the work that's happening with the MPI globally to look at how that work can be progressed in India.
Well, thanks Nadia for your apt summing up of the whole scenario. Listeners, that was Nadia Rashid, UNDP Deputy Resident Representative for India, in conversation with All India Radio. It has been a pleasure talking to you, Nadia. Thanks for sharing the valuable time with us. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
The southern Indian state of Kerala is blessed with a wide richness in biodiversity that few other places in the country can boast of. Under the Indian High Range Mountain Landscape Project, a community ecotourism project is being implemented in Kerala by the Union Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, the Global Environment Facility, Kerala's Harita Mission and the Undp. It aims to promote responsible travel to natural areas that conserves the environment, sustains the well-being of the local people, involves and educates the tourists and the community over the ecological significance of the region. The UN on Wednesday recognized two such projects in Mankulam and Kuttampura Panchayats in Kerala through its Twitter handle. Academy Award-winning music composer A.R. Rahman celebrates his birthday today. Dubbed the Mozart of Madras, Mr. Rahman won 2 Oscars for his soundtrack to the 2009 multi-award-winning Slumdog Millionaire by Danny Boyle. To mark the occasion, let us take a listen to this amazing score from the famous Spirit of Unity concert composed by the musician for India's national broadcaster Doordarshan.
Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Washington Post reports that China is neutralizing Hong Kong democracy movement with mass arrests. According to New York Times, Republican lawmakers plan to object to the votes of some electors at the joint U.S. Congress session on Wednesday. The Guardian writes that thousands of most vulnerable children have been sent to unregulated care homes during the pandemic. Sputnik mentions about the clashes that took place in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday between police and Donald Trump supporters during protests over alleged election fraud. Gulf Times has reported that UAE has approved the 5th economic stimulus package of 315 million dinar. Himalayan Times writes that the Election Commission of Nepal has amended the rules to formalize the split in the ruling Nepal Communist Party NCP.
Moving on to sport, in cricket, Indian team for the 3rd Test match against Australia at Sydney tomorrow has been announced. Rohit Sharma replaces Mayank Agarwal, while Navdeep Saini comes in place of Umesh Yadav. Rohit Sharma is all set to open the innings with Shubham Gill. Pakistan had lost the second and the final Test match against New Zealand. With this, New Zealand has now become the #1 Test team in the world by winning the series against Pakistan by 2-0. In badminton, ahead of the Thailand Open starting next week, the entire Indian contingent cleared the COVID-19 test on Wednesday. A quick look at the headlines once again. India gearing up to roll out nationwide COVID-19 vaccination next week. WHO expresses disappointment over China delaying the visit of expert panel to probe the origin of coronavirus in Wuhan. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds talks with German Chancellor Angela Merkel through video conferencing. India-France strategic dialogue to be held tomorrow. Democrat Rafael Varnok wins runoff elections in Georgia. Control of U.S. Senate hangs in balance. And in sports, Rohit Sharma, Navdeep Saini and Shubham Gill join the Indian squad for Sydney cricket test against Australia beginning tomorrow. India is celebrating the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan Vaishnavajan by artists from Uzbekistan. And with that, we end this bulletin. See you at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of the World News.